The patrol had been walking for 6 hours. The Afghan sun beat down on helmets and shoulders. Dust clung to sweat-soaked uniforms. Somewhere along the route, they'd taken a wrong turn. Lieutenant Marsh stared at his GPS device, then at the paper map, then back at the landscape. Nothing matched. The valley they were supposed to be in looked completely different from the terrain around them. "We're off course," he muttered. Staff Sergeant Chen checked his own device. "GPS is acting up. Signal's weak." Marsh looked at the squad. 12 Marines, all eyes on him, waiting for direction, waiting for him to figure it out. "Anyone got a working GPS?" Marsh asked. Head shook. "Dead. Batteries. Weak signals. Equipment failure." Marsh cursed under his breath. They were lost, in hostile territory, with night falling in for hours. At the back of the patrol, Corporal Jake Sullivan looked up at the sun, then at the mountains, then at the shadows on the ground. He didn't say anything. He never did, especially not when it came to navigation, because the moment he opened his mouth, someone would hand him a map, and he'd have to admit he couldn't read it. But he knew exactly where they were, and he knew how to get them home. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe so you never miss these true tales of courage, and tell us in the comments, where are you watching from today? Corporal Jake Sullivan had been hiding his secret for as long as he could remember. Growing up in rural Oregon, Jake had struggled in school. Letters reversed themselves on the page. Words jumbled into meaningless strings. Reading was torture. Math was worse when it involved written problems. Teachers called him lazy. Classmates called him slow. By the time he was 16, Jake had stopped trying to prove them wrong. He just found ways around it. Audio textbooks, memorization, asking friends for help without admitting why. He barely graduated high school. College wasn't an option, but the military was. The Marine Corps' recruiter had looked at Jake's practice test scores and shaken his head. "Your reading comprehension is way below minimum. You're not going to pass the ASVAB." But Jake had begged for a chance, studied the test patterns, memorized common answers, guessed. Strategically, somehow, he'd scraped by with the minimum score. Boot camp had been hell, not the physical part. Jake was strong, fast, tough. But the written tests nearly broke him. Marine Corps history, weapons systems, land navigation theory. Every exam was a battle he barely won. His drill instructors noticed. They saw him spending twice as long on tests as everyone else. Saw him staring at manuals like they were written in code. One pulled him aside. "Sullivan, you having trouble reading?" Jake's jaw tightened. "No, sir." "You sure? Because there are resources, programs." "I'm fine, sir." He wasn't fine, but admitting it felt like admitting he didn't belong. So he kept fighting, kept hiding, kept finding ways around the words that refused to cooperate. What saved him was his grandfather, a merchant marine who crossed oceans before GPS, before satellites, before any of the technology modern Marines took for granted. During summers as a kid, Jake had spent weeks on his grandfather's fishing boat off the Oregon coast. The old man had taught him things most people had forgotten. How to navigate by the stars, how to read the sun's position, how to use shadows and wind and the shape of the land. A real navigator doesn't need paper, his grandfather had said. He reads the world. Jake had absorbed those lessons without realizing they were lessons. It was just time with his grandfather. But those hours on the boat had given him something the Marine Corps didn't teach anymore. Ancient knowledge, celestial navigation, dead reckoning, skills from an era when men crossed oceans with nothing but their eyes and their instincts. After boot camp, Jake was assigned to an infantry unit. He kept his head down, did his job, never volunteered for anything involving maps or written navigation. During training exercises, he always positioned himself in the middle of the patrol, never at the front where he'd have to navigate, never in leadership positions where he'd have to read orders. His squad mates thought he was just quiet, reserved. They didn't know he was terrified of the moment someone would hand him a map and expect him to plot a route. But Jake had learned to navigate without maps. When the patrol moved through terrain, he watched the sun, noted landmarks, memorized the feel of the land under his boots. He always knew where he was. He just couldn't prove it on paper. In the spring, Jake's unit deployed to Afghanistan, Helmand Province, rocky terrain, narrow valleys, mountains that looked the same from every angle. The kind of place where getting lost could get you killed. The platoon relied heavily on GPS. Every Marine carried a device, Routes were pre-programmed, waypoints marked, technology made navigation simple until it didn't. 3 weeks into the deployment, Jake's squad went on a routine patrol. Sweep a valley. Check for enemy activity. Standard operation. Lieutenant Marsh led the patrol. Young officer Smart. By the book. He trusted his GPS completely. The patrol moved through rough terrain. Steep hills. Loose rocks. The kind of ground that ate batteries and broke equipment. For hours in, Marsh's GPS started glitching. The screen flickered. The signal dropped. Must be the mountains, Marsh said, blocking the satellite. Staff Sergeant Chen checked his device. Same problem. They kept moving, assuming the signal would return. But it didn't, and slowly, the landscape around them stopped matching the map by R6. Marsh finally admitted what everyone had been thinking. We're lost. The squad stopped. Marines dropped their packs and gulped water. Faces were tired, frustrated. The sun was already sinking toward the horizon. Marsh pulled out his paper map, spread it across a rock, stared at it like it might suddenly make sense. Chen joined him. We should be in this valley, but I don't see that ridge we passed. Maybe we took a wrong turn at the fork. Which fork? Marsh didn't answer. He didn't know. The Marines shifted nervously. Everyone knew the rules. Don't stay in one place too long. Don't move at night. Don't get separated from the base. Without comms, and they were violating all three, Marsh keyed his radio. Base. This is Patrol 2-1. We're off course. Requesting guidance. Static. No response. They were too deep in the mountains. Too far from any relay, sir. Chen said quietly, we need to move. We've got maybe 3 hours of daylight. If we're still out here, when the sun goes down. He didn't need to finish. Everyone knew. Taliban owned the night. Marsh looked at the map again, at the GPS, at the terrain. Nothing connected. Jake stood at the edge of the group, silent, watching. He looked up at the sun, noted its angle, checked the shadows on the mountains, felt the direction of the wind. He knew where they were, within a mile, maybe less, but saying so meant admitting how he knew, and that meant admitting what he couldn't do. Sullivan. Jake's head snapped up. Marsh was looking at him. You got any ideas? Every eye turned toward Jake. Waiting? Jake hesitated. His mouth went dry. This was the moment he'd been avoiding his entire career. I can get us back, sir. Marsh raised an eyebrow. You got a working GPS? No, sir. Then how? Jake swallowed. I know where we are. Chen frowned. How? You got a map we don't? No, Staff Sergeant. I can tell by the terrain. Marsh stared at him. You can tell by the terrain. Jake nodded. Sullivan, this isn't a game. If you're guessing, I'm not guessing, sir. The silence stretched. Marsh looked at Chen. Chen shrugged. What choice did they have? All right. Marsh said slowly, show me on the map where you think we are. Jake's stomach dropped. I can't. Sir, what do you mean you can't? Jake's throat tightened. This was it. The moment he'd been dreading. I can't read maps, sir. The confession hung in the air like smoke. Marsh blinked. You. What? I can't read maps, sir. I never could. Chen stepped forward. Wait. You're an infantry marine. Land nav is a basic skill. How did you even pass training? Jake didn't answer. Another marine spoke up. He's screwing with us. This is some kind of joke. But Jake's face said it wasn't a joke. Marsh's expression shifted from confusion to anger. Sullivan, are you telling me you've been faking it this entire time? No, sir. I can navigate, just not with maps. Then how? Jake looked up at the sky, the sun, the stars, the land. My grandfather taught me. The squad exchanged glances. Some looked skeptical. Others looked worried. Chen folded his arms. Sullivan, we're in the middle of Afghanistan. We need real navigation, not some old fisherman's tricks. It's not tricks, Staff Sergeant. It works. Marsh rubbed his face. He was 24 years old, an officer for less than a year, and now he had to decide whether to trust a Marine who just admitted he couldn't read maps. Sir, Jake said quietly, I know where we are. I know how to get us back, but I need you to trust me. Marsh looked at the map, at the useless GPS, at the sun dropping lower in the sky. He didn't have a choice. All right, Sullivan, you're on point. But if you get us more lost, I won't, sir. Jake moved to the front of the patrol. Every Marine watched him with a mix of curiosity and doubt. He looked at the sun, noted its angle, About 2 hours until it touched the horizon. He checked the shadows stretching from the rocks, long, pointing northeast. He turned slowly, studied the mountains, recognized the shape of a distant ridge, the way the valley curved, the pattern of vegetation on the slopes. "We're about 6 miles southeast of where we should be," Jake said. "We missed the turn at the dried river bed. Went to far south." Chen pulled out his map. "How do you know that?" "Because I remember the briefing, the terrain features. I've been tracking landmarks since we started without looking at a map." "Yeah." Jake pointed northwest. "Base is that way, about 8 miles. If we move now, we can make it before dark." Marsh hesitated. Then he nodded. "Lead the way." Jake started walking. The patrol followed. At first, no one spoke, just boots on rocks, breathing, the weight of uncertainty. But Jake moved with confidence. He didn't second guess, didn't stop to check devices. He just walked, reading the land like his grandfather had taught him. After an hour, they crested a ridge. Below them, a valley opened up, and in the distance, faint but unmistakable, the lights of forward operating base Sentinel. Chen stared. Holy shit. Marsh pulled out his GPS. The signal had returned. He checked their position. Then he looked at Jake. "You were right. Down to the mile." The Marines erupted in relieved laughter, slapping Jake's back, shaking his hand. The doubt was gone, replaced by something else, respect. By the time they reached base, word had already spread, the patrol that got lost, the Marine who navigated them home, without a map, without GPS, using nothing but the sun and the stars. Jake's squad mates looked at him differently now, not with pity, with awe. That night, Lieutenant Marsh found Jake outside the barracks. "Sullivan, we need to talk." Jake stood. "Yes, sir." "Why didn't you tell anyone about the maps?" Jake looked down. "Because I thought if people knew, they wouldn't trust me. They'd think I wasn't fit to be a Marine." Marsh was quiet for a moment. "I'm not going to lie. What you did hiding the deficiency, that's a problem. But what you can do, that's something most Marines have forgotten. Sir, you navigated by dead reckoning, by celestial observation, skills we used to teach, but don't anymore because we rely on technology." Marsh shook his head. "And today, when that technology failed, you were the only one who could get us home." Jake didn't know what to say. "I'm going to recommend you for specialized training," Marsh continued. "Navigation instructor, teaching old school methods, because if today taught me anything, it's that we need people who can operate when the machines fail." Jake's throat tightened. "I can't read the manuals." "Sir, then we'll figure it out. Audio, video, hands-on. There's more than one way to teach." For the first time in his life, Jake's inability to read wasn't a disqualification. It was just a detail, and his real skill, the one he'd been hiding, was finally being seen. Over the next few months, Jake became the platoon's go-to navigator when technology failed. And in Afghanistan, technology failed often. Dead batteries, lost signals, broken devices. Every time, Jake stepped up. Using the sun, the stars, the shape of the land, he taught others, not from books, but from experience, showing them how to read the sky, how to track the sun's path, how to navigate by shadow and wind. The Marines who once doubted him now sought him out. "Hey, Sullivan, teach me that star thing." Jake did, gladly, because for the first time, he wasn't hiding. He was sharing something his grandfather had given him, a legacy, a way of seeing the world that had nothing to do with written words. When the deployment ended, Jake returned home. The Marine Corps offered him a position as an instructor, teaching celestial navigation, old school land nav, skills that had been forgotten but were suddenly valuable again. He accepted. Years later, Marines still talked about Corporal Sullivan, the guy who couldn't read maps but could navigate by the stars, the Marine who proved that the old ways weren't obsolete. They were essential. Jake Sullivan never learned to read maps. He didn't need to, because navigation isn't about symbols on paper. It's about understanding the world, reading the language of the earth and sky, seeing what's always been there, but most people have forgotten how to notice. His grandfather had been right. Machines fail, batteries die, but the stars, the sun, the land, those are always there. And if you know how to read them, you'll never be lost. Moral: true skill isn't always found in textbooks. Sometimes the most valuable knowledge is passed down quietly, through hands and eyes and the patient wisdom of those who came before. If this story moved you, don't forget to show your support. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe for more military and veteran stories. We bring you true tales of courage, sacrifice, and honor. Stories that remind us of the quiet strength carried by those who serve. Until next time, stay safe, stay strong, and never forget the heroes among us.